Hey everyone, it's Alan over at Cobblers Plus, and today we got a men's Ann Demeulemeester. I'm pronouncing that right, but that right there. We're going to be doing something that I haven't really done a video too much on, but we're going to be doing some leather half soles. Got to replace the heels. As you can see, this one's all popped off. But one interesting thing, after we get the leather half soles and heels taken care of, we're actually going to put on a really thick crepe on here as a half sole over top and on the heel as well to make it a little more platformed. So come join us and check it out how it's done. So thank you again for joining us, and like I said, we're going to be doing some half soles on these. Now you can tell right there how beaten these up are. The toes are done for, the heels are shot, bases are worn out, but let me go ahead and start out with this one. You can see there's the top lift right there, but it's worn down into the base. And so take out the shoe trees. I already have them marked up that these belong to this pair of shoes. Now, because we're doing half soles and not full soles, and I haven't really shown this too much or anything before, we're not going to be pulling off the heel bases. The heel base, we're going to try to keep the original one, but we're going to restore it. So you'll get to see how the restoration and build-up process goes. Get that little top lift off. And then, let's see. So half soles, I haven't done anything to them yet. This is how they come pre-cut. These are our house grade ones there. And I'm going to go ahead and mark everything up. The interesting thing is that I believe these are Blake stitched, but they're kind of wonky Blake stitched, I've noticed. So first things first, I do my first marking. This is where the half sole will go. Make sure that everything lines up. And then my second marking is where I'm actually going to cut the old sole. So just to give you an idea, so this right here is where I'm going to sand it down, and the edge of the new half sole is going to go over top. But this line right here is where I'm actually going to pull the sole back and cut off the old sole, because I'm going to be beveling this small little section here. And you'll see that as we go through it. Now, actually, I need to use a solvent for this. Make sure that it's deactivating the glues. Okay, while that works its magic, I'm going to pull up that insole just a little bit. That insole is in there pretty good, so it looks like, yeah, it is Blake stitched through. Sometimes some companies, they make imitation Blake stitch, so that's why I want to double check that beforehand. I'll have to pull up that insole a little bit later anyways. Right now it's giving me just a little bit of trouble, but for now, go ahead and start out with our heel pry. That's what they're called, but we use it for a number of other purposes as well. And just go through the edges and just lift them up a little bit. I'm not actually cutting through the stitches or anything quite yet. And there's two methods for a Blake stitch shoe for us to do. So I'll show you this first method on this shoe. The second method I'll show you guys on the other shoe. So the first method is cutting. So the toes are already worn out, so the stitches are already worn through. So that's pretty easy to lift off. And then from here on, I have to cut through the stitches like that there. This is one of my lesser favorite methods, just because the aftermath with the stitches of having to deal with them. Now I'm going to pull this sole back all the way to that furthest line, not this line here, but the one that's further away. Hope that's on camera. Gotta make sure that's there. Alright. Just because we are going to be stitching it that far back as well. go. Alright, so I've got that off. Grab my longer knife. It's not even technically the longest knife, but it's a longer one than the one I just used. And slice through the sole. There we go. Toss that out. And so at this point, I'm going to end up going through and sanding out this area. And this area here, you'll see that in a little bit, but I'm going to go ahead and start out with this sole here. So while I have it over here, I'm going to go ahead and mark it. Well, I'll go like this first. Make sure that I have all the markings in the right spots so that everything is even. Okay, the pen's not wanting to work on the leather, but I'm just lining up where all the sections are. Now I'll go back to my half sole, see how everything's lining up. There we go. Alright, so let's move over to the sander, because we're going to go ahead and sand the stitches out actually on this instead of cutting through it. It's a little bit annoying and everything on my end to have to go back and forth, so I hope everyone's enjoying it. If you are enjoying it, make sure you hit that thumbs up button, subscribe, and hit that notification bell icon, because it definitely helps the channel grow, and you'll be notified when we post new videos, or if we do a live stream. And you never know, during a live stream you might win a free prize or something. Alright everyone, so we're over at the sanders, so I'm going to go ahead and sand out at each line basically. I'm going to sand through this second line here that's further in a little bit deeper as well, and then sand around just the edges to sand through the stitches themselves, so that it helps to pull off the sole easier. Now, like you saw with the last shoe, it's a lot easier for me just to cut it, but afterwards pulling the stitches, sometimes it can get a little tricky with certain shoes. This one, we'll see how it goes, but for now I'll show you the other method that we do on it. Alright everyone, so as far as this right here, the sanding that I did it so it's easier to cut through, as you saw with the first one. Less material to cut through basically just makes it a little bit easier. This one right here was kind of the start for that half sole right here that I need to do. And then as you can see, I sanded around the edges here. So let me go ahead and grab the cleaning agent real quick and make sure that adhesive is deactivated. Not a big fan of the type of glue that they used on here. It stays a little sticky after the solvent is put on there, but it happens. So go through around the edges again. Now going through the edges with this first beforehand without just grabbing a set of pliers is a lot safer. That way it doesn't damage any kind of welts or anything like that, because even though these are Blake stitch, they do still have sometimes a welt that's decorative. Like in the case of this one, it does have it. You can see it right here, and then it's got that padding right there. The padding, however, on these ones we will not replace, just because it's perfectly fitted and everything, unless it's damaged. The type of material that they use is very hefty on here. It's pretty much like an orthopedic grade crepe right there. So, alright, Got that pulled up. See, it's all sticky. I hate the adhesive that they used. It's a mess all the time. Ooh, here comes that nasty squeak. So if you don't like the squeaks, you might want to close your ears for about 5 seconds. Ready? Close them now. Oh, there was no squeak. Alright, I guess you guys got lucky. There was just a tiny little one at the beginning. Alright, there we go. So we've got that portion cut off. Set this one aside just to give it a minute for the solvent to evaporate, because that sole is super sticky, or the inlay there is super sticky, and I just don't want to mess with it. Now the insole, this is going to be the trickier part. Okay, we're going to have to put some new fresh laces in here probably anyways, so let's get these on out of here completely. That insole is in there quite a bit, so it's going to be a little bit of a struggle. I'm going to have to move this out of the way. And that's why we don't bolt our jack stands, these guys, to the floor. Some cobblers do that. Okay. Alright. Got it. At least partially. Would you look at that? Pulled out most of the stitches. Yeah. This is the first one that we did, the one that I cut. And the stitches were stuck through this little insole piece here. So, yeah, see this padding right there? There we go. That right there. That little nylon padding. So the stitches were going through that. So I'm going to go ahead and clean that up. Make sure it's glued back down, because I want to make sure that the glue is all dry at a certain stage when it comes time to stitching, because otherwise then we have all these nasty folds that are all in the way and everything. Go ahead and grab these long needle nose pliers. These were actually originally for removing hooks out of fish's mouths from fishing, but we kind of repurposed them, clipped off the barbs right here on the back end, and now we use them for pulling stitches out of shoes. Comes in handy a lot of times. Which is down in there nicely. Now I won't be able to show you guys too much on the inside, as you can see right there, but this is where my chair comes into play. Gives me a good angle. There we go. That's a good long strand. That's one of the reasons why I would rather pull it from the inside rather than the outside, and cutting it like I did the first one here. It sometimes causes problems when we're trying to pull it out from the inside, because when we start pulling from the outside, sometimes those stitches can cause a little bit of damage on their way out. And I'm a stickler for making sure that all the stitches are pulled as much as possible, because I know some cobblers, especially with Blake stitch shoes, don't tend to pull these out because it's on the inside of the shoe. Most people don't see it, but it kind of starts building up. Say if you have a pair of shoes resoled multiple times, Blake stitch shoes already have a shorter life expectancy than a Goodyear welted shoe. Goodyear welted meaning that they're stitched on the outside, kind of like the decorative welt has here. Again, this is just a decorative welt, but a true Goodyear welted shoe will actually be stitched all the way around the edges on the outside of the shoe. Sorry, mailman came by, but eventually once that welt kind of gets worn out, then the welt can be replaced and hand stitched. Or with a Blake stitch shoe, the stitching goes all the way clear through the upper that gets tucked underneath the any kind of padding on the insides here, and liners and everything. So, and there's no way of making it through the exact same holes because we can't see inside of the shoe simultaneously as looking at the top and everything. It's just impossible. You know, there's just no way. I have enough trouble trying to reach in here to see where all the stitches are to pull out the old ones. So eventually they all just kind of wear down and everything. Alright, cool. Got all the stitches out on this one. There's going to be a few on the back end here that I'm going to pull out. These ones were the ones that were cut. So I already pulled out the portion of these stitches on the inside. Now I got to get a few here on the outside. Just a couple. Oops. Where's my knife for this? One of the things that kind of bugs me on these here is, I'll show you. So you can see that the channeling goes all the way to the back right here. But the stitches, you can maybe see if the camera will catch it. You can see the holes right here. This is the last hole. That means back in this area, it's not stitched. On this side, you can see the thread is still just a little bit. It stopped right there. And they didn't stitch this back area. So sometimes, I mean, it could be a nice thing on certain shoes, certain designs and everything, but they channeled the whole full sole all the way back and, you know, didn't bother stitching it. So it's kind of annoying, but that's I guess kind of part of it. Alright, so I got this glued down. Sorry, I got interrupted with that call, and while on the call I got ahead and pulled off the insole actually off of it completely, and this whole thing came out. So I started out on the back end of the heel, glued it, and then was able to lay down the rest of this sock liner in there basically, and pulled out the other one already. And at this point we're going to go ahead and pull the stitches. So get the laces out of this one as well. Should have done that off camera so I'm not wasting too much of your time. But this one, we'll see how it goes. Sometimes we get lucky and they just all pull out very easily. Other times it's a bit of a struggle. So looks like it's all pulling. Look at that. That's why I like doing it the sanded way, because later on makes it a lot easier to pull majority of the stitches out. And sometimes, I mean, it'll rip a little bit on us during that time, but not much. There we go. One end of the strand and the other. There we go. And then the only other part is that there's a bunch of little pieces because it's two threads that are going through. There's the one that we sanded through portion of the thread, and then the one that we just pulled out in longer strands was the other strand going through. So make sure this one's blown out a little bit. Alright. Okay. But, yep, at this point we're kind of done on them. I'm going to go ahead and glue this up. And then we're going to move on to our 5-in-1 so that I can show you how we bevel the half soles. At least get the first stage of the beveling taken care of, because the second stage of it involves sanding. So I'll let you guys check out what that looks like, and yeah, so we'll see you back here in just a second. Alright everyone, so we've got the half sole here. Now this half sole is the same thickness all around. They come in multiple different thicknesses and we just match them up to what the original sole was like usually. But because we're going to have a beveled edge here, you can see it's not beveled from the factory. Some half soles are, some aren't. And I prefer to be able to bevel my own because I'm still going to be sanding it out. Plus the little skive pieces left behind, we use them a lot of times to spread out glue sometimes. So I'm over at my 5-in-1. This is a tabletop hand-operated machine, basically, that does welt pressing. This is the welt press up here. It goes underneath and then it presses it down and we run it through. This is the skiver here, and then off camera down here where this arm sticks out is I'll show you guys real quick. Right there, that is the blade that cuts the extra materials there. But right now I'm going to be showing you guys the skiver. So run it through just like that, and voila, made it nice and thin. And this is the little skive piece right here. Again, because they're nice and thin, we use these a lot of times for either building up material or being able to spread some adhesive as well. Now, this is not quite beveled enough for us yet. We still have to kind of shave down this area right here, the transition, a little bit better. Otherwise, it's a lump, in other words, and thin it out just a little bit more on the sander. Plus, we still have to rough up this leather anyways on this side some more. So we're going to go ahead and do that on the sander. Let me go ahead and run this one through one more time. And the camera's catching it pretty good. There we go. Yes, this table's messy over here right now. Actually, it's messy everywhere in here at the moment. But there we go. Now they're all skived up, and let's move on to the sander. Alright everyone, so now we're going to go ahead and sand the shoes out and the soles. This back edge right here that's, as you can tell, worn out at an angle. I'm going to sand this a little bit more to make sure I clean it up and remove any residue. And then this area I'm going to go ahead and sand out. This is that first one that we did where we were cutting. So I'm going to sand that out and bevel out the edge and then rough everything up to clean off all the old factory glue. So let's go ahead and get started. Alright everyone, so I've got these heated up. As you can see, I'm going to kind of bend them a little bit and time to position it. I also did the little build up here with a piece of leather on the back end. I'll show you that in a second, but I got to stick this on while it's nice and hot. Now typically with a half sole like this, if we're just doing the half sole without any kind of covers or anything, we'll try to center this the stamping as much as possible. But because this is going to be sanded out slightly anyways to put a thick protector sole on there, it doesn't matter which way it's going to go because it's all the same across. It's just the branding on there. So right now what I'm pushing out is that little, I guess you can call it lip. Sorry, the bell just started going off like crazy, but so this is that lip I was talking about right there that we have to use the back end of the hammer to press down. It's just a little kind of like notch, in other words, there. So we have to make sure that the that bevel goes in there and gets pressed down nicely. You can see a little bit of indentation because this area is going to get sanded out anyways. But I've gone ahead and put this on the press, pressed it out, did the welt press around. This is the back edge of the heel there. So we take a piece of leather. That's why large chunks like this that stick out, we save that leather because we can do build-ups like that. Worst case scenario, if we have to, we can replace the whole heel base, but We try to save the original factory one as much as possible, just because they are formed and fitted to this shoe right here. Doesn't matter if it's the same model or not, it's the shoe in particular, because if you get the same model, size of shoe, and everything's the same and switch the heel bases over, they don't always match up. So at this point, I'm going to let this cure for a little bit, trim this up, and get it ready for stitching. Alright everyone, so I wanted to show this real quick. So you saw me go with the other side here up against the machine like this. Well, I wanted to show, but they have a wonkiness a little bit to them that we gotta sand out so it's a little more even. And also I beveled it, so as you saw with the half sole, the leather one, I was able to run it through the skiver and it bevels it. Well, this is much too soft. The machine would just crush it completely, and it would turn out really bad. So I have to sand it out to make it a little bit more beveled like that there. And so basically there'll be less of a transition basically of the materials. Now at the front end, we're trying to keep it thick, so that's what we're going to go ahead and do, and just make a nice thick sole. A lot of times, in some cases though, however, we also bevel the front as well. In that case, we'd end up making sure that this is traced out a little more closely to the shape of the shoe itself, and then we would know where we need a bevel and everything and stop. But this one's going to be thick all the way across, but on the back end we want to make sure it's on the thinner side so that the transition's a little bit smoother and less possibility of the corner getting caught and then starting to peel up as well. So that's that. Then to give you an idea, we did the channeling here because we're going to be Blake stitching these, and I just followed basically the exact same width as what it was on there before. And then the back edge of the heel here, the heels are slightly beveled inward a little bit. A lot of shoes they'll either be straight or beveled outward, but sometimes they'll bevel them inward. So I did leave a little bit left behind of the adhesives and everything, just so that I don't end up shaving it down too far. Then when we're going to get to the process of putting on the top lift and everything, then I'll be refining it a little bit better. But this is what the little lift or build-up looks like. So it goes from this to that right there. So gives you a bit of an idea of what it looks like. So at this point I'm going to go ahead and finish out this one, and we'll move on to the stitching and get these all stitched up and continue on. Alright everyone, so it's time to go ahead and stitch these up. We're over at our Blake stitch machine, and yeah, you can just enjoy and watch it basically. As far as like all the details, they're kind of touch on the camera stand. It's kind of hard to explain all the details because there's so many components to this thing, but basically the needle goes clear through the sole here and it comes in on the inside right there. So that's what Blake stitch method is, instead of where a Goodyear welt stitcher like this machine over here that's to the side, that will stitch around the welt over here. Now this one has that imitation welt, and you can see down in in there possibly, if I can get it in between the camera and the machine. See that crack right there? That's gonna end up being stitched up and everything, but because it's not Goodyear welted, can't exactly just go straight to the Goodyear welt machine and do it that way. We have to really change it up quite a bit. And there's a little piece of grass that's just bugging me here. I guess the person must have stepped in it or something at one point. There we go. Now it's not going to bug me. Alright, but we're just going to stitch the half sole area up and just a little bit past it, so you'll see that here as it goes. So let's go ahead and get started. Sometimes we have to manually lift it up because it might get stuck on the inside just a little bit. That's one of the things I hate about Blake stitch method, because inside the insole's so broken in that it can get a little stuck in a certain spot and I have to manually readjust it. There we go, quick and simple. Sometimes it's not so simple either, because these machines have so many moving components and everything that if something goes off just a little bit, the stitching doesn't work out, the stitches can get ripped, and it's just all sorts of problems. So you gotta know the machines that you're working with. Alright, so make sure everything's good in there. It's kind of hard to see, but down in there, yeah, these things look a little dirty, but that's actually just the adhesives all over the place there. And then we've got everything stitched up around there. Now, one of the things, because it's a Blake stitch machine, is that there is padding in here after all, and the needle is kind of like a hook, so sometimes it may pull up some of that padding, but that gets kind of cleaned up. You might be able to see little small chunks, so we try to clean it up as best we can, but every now and then maybe some of it might show through. So I'm going to go ahead and get the other one stitched up. I'm going to go ahead and get this glued up. We're going to use the contact cement here and on the heel. Now the heel I am going to build up with some leather first. I need to make sure that the heel's not being worked on too much, because if it's too high, the heel will actually get caught in the machine when I'm trying to stitch it. And so that's why we have to go at certain stages. If I add the heel too soon or something, it makes it too thick on the back end, even though we're not stitching the heel, and it can get in the way of the machine. But I'll be gluing up the thick sole protector basically, and the leather build-up for the heel to make sure that everything's all nicely leveled out, and then we'll be able to add the thick crepe material after. So we'll see you back here in just a minute. Alright everyone, so I just pulled out the sole out of the oven here. It's a little warm, but I'm gonna go ahead and put this on here. I'm going to overlap it just a smidge here. And there we go. So hammer that out. So what we're using as far as the sole protector here, this is Pyramid Crepe from Vibram. Comes in a variety of thicknesses just because it's also used a lot of times in orthopedic uses. So that way you've got a little bit of grip, but you got that nice cushion. Right now it's softer than it usually is. Just you can see how soft it is. I'm barely pressing, but that's just because it's really warm. Make sure that everything's on there good. Alright, let's see. Now, because it's such a soft material, I'm not actually going to stick it on the press, because otherwise it's going to really kind of collapse it. Just pressing it down by hand and hammering it is plenty enough. And then as far as the heel, got these leather pieces. Ooh, that one's toasty. Go ahead and put that on, and then that I can just stick on the press and let it sit for a few minutes. And so at this point I'm going to let this all cure, because the soles are usually more problematic about curing just because of the curvature of it. And then the heels, I'd like to let it cure anyways overnight. And then so tomorrow I'll be able to come in, trim up the heel area a little bit better, and then put the pyramid crepe on the heel here as well. So when it's time to continue on, then we'll see you back here in just a little bit. Alright everyone, so I've got the leather lift piece put in here right there. You can see the different color on it. And so now at this point I've got the top lift section heated up already. Now the leather lift obviously we're doing to make sure that everything's leveled out with the rest of the shoe nicely. Otherwise, if we didn't put that in, it would feel like he's leaning back too much. So there we go. Now today is already the end of the day for these guys, so I just need to let them go ahead and cure. Did have a little bit of trouble making sure that the this leather piece here was adhering properly. And it had a little bit of a, I guess you can call it a reaction. In other words, where the synthetic material that they used for the original heel bases didn't want to adhere right away to the leather, and so I have to make sure that I let it cure nicely before I do anything else. And that was mainly the trimming up a little bit. As you can see, it's a little roughed up there, but at this point I'm gonna let this cure overnight. Come in, cut off the edges here, sand it out. In the meantime, I can go ahead and re-glue the insoles back in these guys. Let that also cure overnight because we're all done. We're not needing to run any kind of nails since we didn't remove the heel base or anything. And yeah, and just continue on. So we'll see you back here in just a bit. Alright everyone, so I thought I'd just show off the machine real quick since I started sanding and everything, but I want to show you guys after and kind of explain it. So this right here we have is our belt sander here. It kind of goes around right in there, and so it's a bit on the longer side. It's 4 inches wide, so it kind of gives us a nice surface area to work with. Up here on this machine we've got our our trimmer for like ladies' heels and stuff, so kind of like, you know, thin protective soles like these here on these Louboutins, and then these are what are called the dowel pin heels, the ladies' heels. And then here, if you saw me using that, this is called a brister cone, and it basically gets the inside of the heel and kind of gets everything sanded out nicely, because it's impossible to get underneath there with that belt, for example. Then up here, you can see this is what's called the numb keg. This spins around and it kind of gives us our final touches and everything. Gets some of the nooks and crannies. We can use the top of the numb keg, the bottom of it, the whole surface area there. But yeah, so you can see how dirty the machine is. It's, again, with all the sanding. This is fine sanded dust here. We actually like to save that because it works great for filling in holes and stuff like that with certain mixes of different epoxies or other fillers and stuff. So we definitely like to save that dust there and collect it in a little container. But to give you an idea, this is 100 grit here. This is, I believe, what was it? 40 or 50 grit. sandpaper here, so it's a little bit on the rougher side, and then this one up here usually is about 100-120 grit as well. Now if we go over to this other machine here, it's a very similar build, but it's still very different. Sorry everyone, got kind of cut off there with somebody coming in. But yeah, so this is the other machine here, and this one we usually have the 24 grit sandpaper, so it's much rougher, as you can see. This one's slightly worn down already as far as the belt goes, but very similar build overall. This one does not have the numb keg piece because, again, this is kind of our rough out sander, but it does have a sole trimmer on this one instead of the heel trimmer like the other machine had. So if, as you saw me sanding out or trimming out the leather sole, this has these blades also just like the heel trimmer, but the guides are very different, and it's designed for doing, well, leather soles. The blade is a little differently angled and everything as far as how it cuts, but kind of gives you an idea and some perspective of these things spinning a few hundred miles an hour, how terrifying that could be. And then on this edge here, we've got the channeler here. Some channelers you can get lucky and you can have a table version, which I do have, but mine's an industrial style, so I can't find replacement parts for it at the moment. So currently we've been using this one here, and I actually like it because of how fast it spins and everything. It is also kind of terrifying because you can probably see that they're little tiny blades basically, and they spin very fast. But thought I'd give you guys a quick tour of the machine, well, or the machines in this case, and let you see what everything's all about. So I'm gonna go ahead and finish out the edging of these shoes here. These, they had black all around. I sanded out the bottom just a little bit to make sure that the bottom can be refinished as well. And then that little piece of thread there, that was original factory thread that was kind of just acting up. You can probably see a few of the holes from the factory too. That area was not stitched. That little chunk of thread was the one that I guess I wasn't able to grab with the needle nose pliers and kind of missed it. So I'm going to go ahead and cinch that and get that out of the way because it has no usability even before I was working on it. But there we go. So I'm gonna go ahead and do the edging, get these cleaned up, shined up, and we'll see you back here in just a bit. All right, everyone. So I've got the edging all taken care of. There we go. Got that Vibram crepe all cleaned up and everything. That little spot there looks like it was kind of embedded there, that little stitch. So I cinched it down and everything, but it's literally just a little chunk of thread. We got new fresh thread in there anyways. I just had to get it to go just past that leather base, or the leather midsole in other words. And I also had gone through and reconditioned the uppers. I put some new laces in there that are a little bit different than ours. Ours are just a slight bit thinner, so I decided to leave the laces in for the gentleman in case he decides he wants to try to match them up. But yeah, and then the other thing is, like I mentioned, the heel base there slightly angled inward, which is common, but also at the same time the goal of most shoes is try to keep it as straight as possible, but sometimes you got to follow what the pattern is from the factory on those guys. But anyways, that kind of gives you an idea of how different process it is, in other words, versus a full sole, because we've done a number of full sole videos and full rebuilds and recrafts where this one was getting a half sole instead. But not only that, we're also adding a thick half sole over top of it with thick heel as well, to make it a little more platform. Now if you're wondering why does he want it platformed or something like that, it's personal preference. I've had some people that want to be a little bit taller, but it is also apparently becoming a little bit of a fashion trend in certain parts of Asia as well as in Europe too. So I've been seeing that kind of build a little more frequently, especially from Europe, where people are wanting that kind of build. I've got some other boots and shoes in here that have an even higher heel, and they're a man's boot and everything, but it's just different types of fashions and everything like that. So I just thought I'd point that out. There were a few spots that I didn't get with the lighter. Cinch up the thread a little bit. So if you like the video, make sure to hit that thumbs up button, subscribe and hit that notification button, and share the video as well to help the channel grow. We definitely appreciate it. And if you don't hit that notification bell icon, I know some people aren't too aware of it, you won't be notified when we have our new videos out. But the other thing is, if we end up going live at random, which we have done, you may miss out on a free giveaway as well. So definitely make sure you hit that little bell. It's right next to the subscribe button, usually, I believe, right, Janelle?
I think so.
Yeah, I don't know.
So the
I just
is
yeah.
Right
So
next to it.
it's right next to it. But yeah, hit the little bell icon. You have to hit it after you hit the subscribe button. And yeah. And if you have any questions, comment down below if they're a shorter question. If they're a longer, more detailed question, I highly recommend either emailing us, or you can message us through Facebook or Instagram, or you can also give us a call, as well as stop by if you're local. So you got a few options there, but commenting down below in the comment section, if it's a long question, it's kind of hard to read through it all when there's a lot of comments stacked up on top of each other. So Facebook or Instagram messaging is definitely probably a little bit on the quicker side. I get notifications that way quicker. Email, we get a little backed up sometimes on it, just because we're not only getting, you know, your questions through email, but we're also getting a number of other emails, so it gets a little backed up sometimes. Or again, you can always call. Calls can most likely be a little bit on the quicker side as well. So again, thank you for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and we'll see you next time.